Well, we welcome you to Conversations and Coffee today on this 26th day of August 2021. We're virtually with our staff members, Jennifer McCracken, Lindsay Lasanti, linking us with Zoom at the Cultural Arts Center in Columbus, Ohio, and to Boston, Massachusetts, with our Jesuit artist today, Father John Predmore. I'm Ellen O'Shaughnessy, coordinator for the Conversations and Coffee. We have a great staff and faculty here at the Cultural Arts Center, led by Director Jeffrey Martin, Associate Director Todd Camp. Katie Fisher helps us get the word out on our website. Lozzie Douglas meets and greets us by phone at the front desk at our beloved Cultural Arts Center, downtown Columbus. Father John Predmore, with us today, shares his works of art in watercolor, oils, photography. Father John is a Jesuit priest whose ministries have included chaplaincy to faculty, staff, parents, alumni at Boston College High School. His ministry includes retreats in arts and spirituality. Father John has an art studio in Boston where he runs an Ignatian artist group, which focuses on people helping each other be creative. He maintains that art is a way to compassionate communication. My husband and I, and Bob is with me here today, made several virtual retreats out of Boston this last winter into spring with Father John around art, communication, and spirituality. He had us doing art in a way that truly surprised us. We could draw. We could create assemblages, collages that had meaning for us. We could paint. And in the breakout sessions with people we had never met from all over the country, from California to Boston, we communicated in wonderful conversation and compassion and art, and all focused often on the crazy COVID and what we were going through to survive. Father John shares that when he was the pastor in Amman, Jordan, in the English language parish, he met an Iraqi artist who had trained at the University of Chicago. He taught Father John how to draw. John had never taken a formal art class, and yet the instructor was pleased with the results. So he asked Father John, "When are you going to begin to paint?" He suggested Father work on a seascape, followed by a still life, and then a portrait. So John followed his counsel and painted every opportunity he could find, with his parishioners joining in to see his gallery exhibition. You share with me, Father, that your parishioners had as much fun as you did. When you returned to the United States, you studied at Massachusetts College of Art during the sabbatical. You learned a great deal about the influence of color to create moods and capture the interplay between light and dark. You continued taking watercolor classes and landed up teaching art on the side and then formalizing teaching. You will further describe this learning curve, we hope, as you share your paintings with us. Your theology states that God is a God of creativity, and we participate in God's plan for the world when we create. We're so grateful to host you today as an artist and as a person who shares your work so delightfully. Take it away, Father John.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to be with you today. And I have recently some news to share that I am collaborating with our retreat center in Campion Center in Weston, Massachusetts, and we are dedicating this one room as an artist studio that we will use for retreats. And so we'll begin this process of expanding one's creativity in whatever realms, whether it's painters, people who draw, people who just want to sketch, quilters, people who make cards, any sort of craftsmanship will be welcome in this place, all with the idea that that creativity is an essential part of our cooperating in God's plan for the world. And what we want to do with our art is really celebrate what's right with the world, because as you know, with COVID, as we're listening to the bombing in Kabul and Afghanistan, in other areas of the world, we are a people beset by polarities, and what art has the ability to do is to bring people together, to unify them. And in the church, the highest value of anything is unity. It's not even the truth, but it's unity. Can we stay together as a people in the faith? And so art has the ability to do that. And as I go through this presentation today, I'll speak more about creativity than I will about artists, because some people are reluctant to call themselves artists because we know who we are. We're just people who are creating, and artists can define a type. And I want to do away with those types and focus upon creativity, because creativity is an essential part of each one of us. And so this creativity means we are cooperating with God's creating actions in the world, and we can just enjoy what comes forward. So we can move to the next screen. And this is a painting I did 2 years ago now. So it's called Aneurysm, and this is everything that I try to do is a reflection upon what is going on inside of me. So I'm trying to express something. My older sister, Dara, had a brain aneurysm 2.5 years ago, little over 2 years ago. And she was in Los Angeles, and I'm in Boston, and her family's in Boston. And this was an attempt to figure out, what can I do to help her out? Being 3,000 miles away, it was a hardship. And so this particular painting, as you look at it, it's kind of light with pastel colors. The background was very dark to begin with. And as it took me several weeks to put together, as I was dealing with my worry, my concern, and there's darkness underneath to say, I don't know how to help. I am powerless. I don't know what to do. And so I just started putting down paintings that mirrored the mood that I was feeling. And as I went on, you can see in the top right is like a handprint. That was my sister struggling to move as the aneurysm blinded her. There's, as you can see, the bottom, the right-hand side, the third on the right-hand side, it's the vertebrae, as she was not able to stand up straight. There are scratch marks from a woman who used to come in and would steal her candy and take anything that my sister had. And so there was all of this angst going on. But as I kept working at it and kept figuring out what resources were available for me, how I could help, to see that my sister had a chance of getting better, everything calmed down, and I was able to see the hope, which is that kind of sprig of green that is in the center bottom, just kind of blossoming out, that my sister had a chance once again. And so it ended up being pastel colors of hope, and just a symbol of how we can put things together in the healthcare industry that doesn't always respect it doesn't always respect the rights of those who cannot speak for themselves, and especially women who are not treated as well as men in the healthcare system.
Mm. Mm.
Beautiful.
Yes, it is.
The,
We're
the
talking about color. Color is so exquisite in this. Just beautiful.
So Jennifer asked, is it the right shape? It was upside down, but that in a sense the direction doesn't matter.
Yeah, I just realized because I'm on an iPad, it's a little different. So I want to make sure you guys are seeing it in the fullest way you can. So
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
you're welcome.
So the next one is a symbol. I wanted to do a symbol of the resurrection. So a lot of my prayer had to do with, like, what were the first steps of Jesus as he was resurrected to life? And so in my prayer, I just kept imagining the pain that he felt as he stepped onto the ground again and was stumbling because he didn't have his strength. His muscles had deteriorated. He had open wounds, and he really had to relearn to walk again. And so I wanted to, so I was focusing upon that and the doorway that he must have looked through. Now I transported it to a Tuscan doorway. This image is one that I saw often when I was in the Middle East, where you have this grand doorway looking out, but then it was looking at sand, and I wanted it to be a symbol of the resurrection, all of this new life. And so I played around with the light. So there's a light that is obviously outside, but there's also a light that is on the inside as well. And in a sense, they are meeting. And you can see the darkness of the room, the darkness of the tomb, and that this is the world that Jesus is going to pass through and find that there is abundant life. So I wanted to create that. You don't obviously see that as you see this Tuscan doorway, but that was the impetus of my drawing this. So, and I like the interplay with light and shadows because that really tells a story. If you're looking at a painting, you want to look at the contrasts, you want to look at the shapes, and you want to build upon that. And so I tried to put in both the shapes and the contrast, and it has led to something that speaks to me of a religious dimension, but it is a continuation of our journey forward into life.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you. This is hanging in a friend's house in Seattle, Washington. It was the first time I was doing a night scene, but I also wanted a lot of color in it. And I wanted a city scene because with everything that I'm trying, I don't know that I've settled into my style yet, but I am trying out different things. And I wanted to see how I could get the perspective, the trees that are lined up kind of sequentially, going into the back, the storefront where you see kind of mannequins and retail shopping, a little tree outside. It's raining and it's a desolate night. But even though it's dark, it's in the fall, and there isn't a foreboding sense to it, but it is really the change of seasons, and that life kind of goes on, and commercial activity retail activity is part of our lives. And so can this be a celebration of life, which is, as you look at the windows above, you see the blues and the pinks and some of the greens, just almost like confetti, like life is going to go on. And so the autumn doesn't necessarily mean that all activities stop, but we continue to live and enjoy the beauty that lights can bring us in this time of year.
The painting of water, does he have an umbrella?
Yes, so it's
That
during the
water
rain.
reflecting is beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Hard to do that, huh?
Yeah, it is. But I was pleased with the effects,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
pleased with the reflections. That actually came easier than putting the confetti on the upper parts of the wall.
Imagine so.
But the reflections just give the perspective and the dimensions of depth. That this is a continuous cityscape.
And that you chose that deep blue to the left of the painting.
Which is a little unusual because it's supposed to be a bit of the reflection of what's in the window, but the blue being a cooler color, you would think would recede. But I tried putting it in the front because as you work with complementary colors, you know that orange and blue go together. So the complementary colors means that you need, if you're using orange, then you need blue to bring that balance to it. Otherwise, the mind gets distorted. And so I brought in that blue to the front, kind of as a trial to see how it would work out.
Wonderful. I want to walk in those storefronts. It just draws you into it. It's wonderful.
And I like that it's impressionistic, that you don't have to work upon the details, but it works because of the details as well. You don't have to be sharp with them.
I like the sidewalk. It looks like you could get your feet wet walking there.
To jump in the puddles.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who, when it's the fall, I always make sure I walk in the leaves and crunch them. Or if it's the winter, I walk in the snow, and I kick the ice around, and I just like the natural elements. We don't often, in the class that I teach at Creighton University, I often begin with the use of the senses, and we try to heighten the senses so that we can appreciate the beauty that is around us more often. And so I focus upon the senses as the primary inputs to what is God saying to us. It comes through the senses, and then the senses are united by the imagination as it unites the heart and the mind. And then it gives meaning to our experiences, and that meaning, that conversation, is what we bring to the Lord in prayer. So I love jumping into the senses.
Well, you had Bob and me walking through the Park of Roses as you were calling us to bring together leaves, We had pine cones. We had a beautiful arrangement. And we couldn't believe what we came up with as you called us to do that. It was a beautiful work of art.
Thank you. And like as Inga is a photographer, you focus upon that tiny little detail that brings meaning to that larger image
Yes.
around you.
Huh.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
So this was friends had just gone to a trip to they actually went to the trip to the Netherlands, but I then saw this image about Copenhagen, and I said, well, I like that architecture, and it's tall, it's vertical, and the verticality could work well in a painting.
Oh, that's
But
fun.
to balance it off, I wanted to put in some umbrellas where people were just out having fun and just enjoying a seaside restaurant experience. But I wanted that festivity to come about, that people of all ages and types they were together enjoying the great colors of this architecture, to get again the reflections upon the water, and boats are always attractive in paintings for some reason. People love boats, and so I just played with that and enjoyed what I came up with.
Wonderful.
But the idea was really to have festivity. This is Paris after the rains again. Same type of. This was a time when I was just trying out this methodology, and I wanted to get the perspectives front to back. How do we see the continuation of these lines? And as you see, there are three people again walking in the rain, and just really kind of continuing on with life, but to be colorful and to not have it be realistic, but just really to say that the great time to take photographs is during the rain or just following the rain. You get these puddles, and it makes the photographs interesting. So if you do it in a photograph, can you do it in a painting as well? And so the star of this is really the lanterns, the lighted, the street lights that really continue to say, life doesn't have to stop. It goes on, and we're going to bring light to the world.
Well, I love the way you line up those lights like you lined up the umbrellas in Copenhagen, those blue umbrellas. And these lights, there's something of the way it draws you into, and the word isn't repetitive, it's more inviting. Huh? I love that.
We look for patterns when we paint.
Patterns.
So patterns kind of calm the eye. Whenever you paint, whenever you have a photograph, you want to draw attention to a certain area. And so you want to lead the person's eye to a particular place. The guy with the umbrella, I guess, becomes the focal point because the lights, the lanterns kind of point in that direction, and then the reflections beyond, it comes to this central point. But I would still say that the lanterns are the star. The man is not. But you see life continuing.
John, I have the image of the saints go marching in, up and down, on earth and beyond,
Right.
with just a gorgeous painting that's transcendent to me. There's so many ways one can receive joy and resurrected hope in a painting like this.
This painting is now in Kentucky.
Is it for sale?
It's sold. It's sold.
Oh, give me the name. I'll pick it. I want it.
This particular painting, it's like 3 feet by 2.5 feet. And it's all dots. It's all colored dots. And I was with, I met these new parishioners at Mass, and he's a skipper. And I showed him a watercolor, and he said, I'd like to have that watercolor. And then he said, but even more, I'd like you to paint a larger one for me. And I showed him a painting that I did that was in dots. And he said, and if you can do it in dots. It's like, are you kidding me? But there's between 25,000 and 30,000 dots in here. So it's very, very patient. This very difficult process of doing it. It's in Naples, Florida, hangs in Naples, Florida. And he has made cards out of it, stationery out of it. He just enjoys it. But it just, again, are they true movements of the boat? No, and they're not meant to be, but they're just meant to be that there is this great flurry of sailing activity. And the dots really kind of make it fun. And if you were to look at it as a close-up, you see lots of greens, yellows, reds. You may not, okay, it's not, this might not be the finished version, but you'll see in there that there are all of these different colors that really, yeah, so it's not in this version.
Wow.
But the close-up makes it much more striking because.
Now, how are you going about? How do you do that? How do you produce those dots?
A brush, a smaller brush, and just, you gotta, one of the things you have to do is clean the brush often so that it doesn't build up. But you first have to get a base there. So I put in a light blue base at the top 70% and the dark blue base at the bottom. And then you just continue to go over it. And you're doing a lot of stepping back because you want to focus upon the minuscule work that you're doing, but then you've got to step back to see, is this working? Am I creating the movement that I want? So I can tell this wasn't the final version because you can see like this highlight around the boats that doesn't appear in the last one, in the final version. But that took.
I don't know. How would we ever know? Oh,
it raises the question, when is a painting done? And there are two answers to that. When it's sold, when someone says, I want to buy it. Or you just say,
Never.
there's something inside that says,
When I stop.
I'll put it down right now. If I come back to it, then it needs to be finished. But I was very proud of that because I didn't know that I could take this watercolor, which was meant to be so fluid, and convert it into a fluidity in the oil painting.
Oh.
But even the white is all
Mhm.
Dotted whites.
Wow.
So this one is an application of lights, and it was a beginning of my turning away from all these bright colors to a darker subject. And you see that the sky is not just one color, but it's kind of this, there's some activity in there as the dust is setting its sun upon this house. This is hanging in Watertown, Massachusetts, and it's just capturing the darkness that happens when the light is not upon the house, but also the brilliance at the golden hour of the day, which is the best time to take photographs. That's early in the morning, right before sunrise, or in the evening before sunset. And you get this warm cast of light, which is why I love the month of November, because this light that we get is really the golden hour of the month. And it's soft and it's sublime, and that's the effect of light that I think makes the world so beautiful. And so this was my first attempt at creating, it's kind of a purplish blue and an orange, which are complementary colors, but it just I think it captured the sunlight the way that I wanted it to. So I was proud of that painting.
Beautiful.
And this again, a lot of people say, "Can you paint the boat for me?" So this is hanging in Ipswich, Massachusetts, and it's again a sailing community. It's just meant to be kind of just in the sailboat in the front, and this is the journey ahead. So I wanted this sense of freedom and adventure and a lightness to life, that you don't have to worry about anything. You're sailing, you're going someplace. Where you're going doesn't really matter. It's the participation in the journey and getting carried along by the winds that really matter. So can we kind of cooperate with the winds and the Holy Spirit? And I liked doing the and you see the left hand side of the boat, the shadow that is cast upon it. I was pleased that it you never really use true white in a painting. You use versions of white, and I think that as you look at it from this direction, that shadow really works and gives it another dimension. And so
That Iraqi artist that you knew in Amman noticed how good you were at drawing. Did you draw all your life, or did it just come when you were in the garden?
I drew when he told me to draw.
Oh, wow.
So I hadn't done it before that.
Oh.
But we spent some time just drawing boxes and circles and doing shading. And that shading exercise, I think, was the most important part. Two important parts. The shading exercise, so that we get the shapes and we can make a circle appear as a circle, even though it's a two-dimensional drawing, by adding the shadows. And he kept saying, "Bolder, bolder, go bolder." And I say, "I might rip through the paper." He says, "That's okay. I want you to rip through the paper. I want it to be that dark." And when you kind of let go of what you think it should look like and just kind of follow the instructions, you come up with something that you step back and you say, "Hey, wow, that is that really does look like a circle. And the other part is like 2-point perspective, where you take a box and you can set buildings so that you get a dimension. People say they don't know how to draw a straight line. Well, we have rulers for that. But if you can learn some of the principles of just drawing, that is much more important than the painting itself.
Wow.
Because if you can draw, then you can do anything else. And so getting that perspective fits very well. And you can, so here you can see kind of the sea up close is lighter than the darker sea in the back. And another thing that people like in drawings is blue. So this was my attempt. Can I, is this a painting I can easily sell? And it went fairly quickly. In fact, I didn't even get to put it in the studio. It was bought before I went to the studio. And the other thing is, working with grays is so important. So this is Acorn Street in Boston. It's the most photographed street in Boston. If you have watched Steve McQueen and she used to go to my church. I forget her name, but in the Thomas Crown affair in the early 70s, this was a major feature of that movie. And again, this is architecture. I wanted to try to get the perspective. Every time I try to do something, it's because I've not done it before and I want to see if it works. And so, but this does look like Acorn Street, and people come to the studio. It's still in the studio, still ready for sale. People say, "Oh, Beacon Hill, Acorn Street," and they like old time Boston. And so kind of the brickwork and the lanterns showing that perspective. There are the patterns and there are the lines that lead you down Acorn Street. I was fortunate this one morning when I took a photo because there was no one on that street. It's probably the only time I've not seen anyone. It's probably the first time that no one has been on that street in my mind.
That makes me homesick.
Are you from the?
I'm from Braintree.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So I like it. This was my very first painting at all. So a watercolor painting, 3 boats at the coast. I just wanted, this was a style I wanted, kind of representational, that it's a seaside village with boats at the base of the village, and then 3 boats are going out into the harbor with kind of this mountain in the background. I was wondering, could I make this work? Could I do it with splashy colors? Would the watercolor, would the brightness of the watercolors hold up? And could I at least make something sensible? And so this was my very first one. This is hanging in Jamaica.
Oh.
Wow.
That Jamaican bought it.
And where did you paint this?
This was when I was in Amman. So I started taking the drawing classes, and I was given a gift of watercolor paints and pencils. And so at the same time I was drawing, I was beginning to do this. The person who bought it was just absolutely astounded. As the artist, I was like, well, it's not quite what I wanted, but and he kept saying, no, I want it. Just I love it. I just want to take it. And so I sold it for $20 because the big thing for painters is you never know what price is right. And this was my first sale, really. And at that time, I was doing what I want other people to do. Your job is to create. Your job is not to judge. Other people will judge it by buying it. Other people will judge it by not buying it. Your job is to create. So if you are creating something that pleases you, that's the only thing that matters.
John, pardon the pun, but I think it's a good, you have captured watercolor.
Gotcha.
You could name that watercolor, Boats at the Coast, John.
Okay. All right. Sounds like a Dominican joke.
Your Iraqi teacher must have been so happy with what you were creating. He had studied in the University of Chicago. What an amazing way the two worlds came together here, huh?
Yes. He does some amazing work as well. This I wanted to try. It was like my first abstract, and I created a triptych, 3 panels. This one was the time before Advent. The next one was an Advent flowering. Then a third one called The Journey Home. And I wanted, again, the brightness and patterns and shapes, but again with darkness. And so this was to represent the confusion that can happen in our lives when we don't have a spiritual founding, a spiritual base, and that there is kind of chaos around us. And there might be a center that holds, but this is a kind of a fiery center, and it is not calmed down yet. But I tried to, again, put in some adjacent colors and complementary colors so that there is brought a balance to it. Again, keeping with the shapes and the patterns. So that was my first kind of geometric abstract design. But again, it's in a series. This birch tree is okay. I did 2 birch trees. One of them is in Amman, Jordan. The other is in the Berkshires. I attended a concert called Wounded Winter, and it was just a moving concert. And the idea of how nature is wounded and the world around us are wounded and we are mourning together just kind of brought me back to this sense of let me look at the colors of nature again. And so when I went out for a walk that weekend, I was in this birch tree grove, and I just wanted to. This was a fairly large panel, and I just wanted to represent the whiteness, the off-whiteness, the layering underneath, and the browns that that really show the wounds of our lives. And so something simple like that takes so much time because there's a lot that goes into it. And you want patterns, but you also don't want the patterns. And there's some texture in it as well. And you can see the knots.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Now you create that texture through, well, how do you do that?
You can add materials to the paint, or you can let the paint dry and then come back to it. This was another pointillist type of work, but instead of dots with bigger splashes. And the Eiffel Tower it's not rounded or curved the way that I have it, but as an artist, there are no rules, and you suspend the animation, you suspend the imagination, and you just work on it. Of course, the star is the sky. This burst of light in the sky that has some movement to it, and it's set within the context of the Eiffel Tower, and just again, to capture the nightness of the sky, but with the bright lights as well.
Wonderful.
And as you know, Paris is filled with so many lights. So that's got to come through when you're looking at the Eiffel Tower. And I think Bill Pierce needs to go. You are welcome. Thank you for joining us, Will. And I'm sure Ellen thanks you as well.
Yeah.
Many
Thank you. All right. Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.
John, Bob and I organized a trip out of the Cultural Arts Center with Cheryl and Ron Soner. And we went to Paris in a way that we have never been to Paris before, all through the art and certainly the Eiffel Tower. And this would be such a celebration of it. Has someone bought this painting?
No, this is still in my studio.
Ah,
People come in and they like it, and there'll be a day when someone walks out with it.
well, who knows? We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
May call for us to make a trip to Boston.
Okay.
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
Thank you.
Mm.
So this is I showed you that triptych before Advent. This road home is after Advent. It's when the Christ child comes. So this is like the road to Bethlehem that the Magi would have followed, where the mountains were made low, the valleys raised, and it's kind of an easy path to follow, but a sense of, even though it's bright red, a sense of serenity. Actually, from this, I've done 7 or 8 other paintings in different colors, just to bring, so kind of the same scene, but just to do like a Zen green, a lilac color, because a lot of people like this image, and it works it's the right size that it could work in someone's bedroom at a certain place, or in someone's bathroom where lots of paintings are placed. But I wanted that Zen tranquility of this to kind of dominate, and it does when you see the 3 together.
Mm.
And then this is it's kind of an interesting thing for me to do with the brightness. This is hanging in New Hampshire, and it's a fairly large piece, and I like how the red and the purple worked so well together, with a little sliver of green, and so the sunlight that just radiates on part of the grass and comes through just part of the part of the clouds. I wanted to work on colors. As you see, I'm not averse to colors, and but I have been working with whites and grays lately, so I'm just trying out whatever I can to see what works best. But I think this kind of took a shape that I really appreciated, and I like the brightness of it, the boldness of it.
You'll be giving classes out of the Campion Center?
Yes,
That's wonderful.
yeah. And we'll start with drawing at first, just simple drawings.
Oh, you'll be a great mentor for that.
It was probably my third or fourth watercolor. This was to show movement. I was singing in a Jordanian group. They sang mostly Arabic songs. So I was learning Arabic to sing. And I wanted it to be a jazz band. So you see the trumpet and the movements, and there's the piano kind of at the center. And it was, a challenge with the colors, but I think I got something. At least I know that someone bought it because they liked it so much and it fit their musical studio. But it was probably my third attempt, and I wanted to be loose while having some sense of movement, that it wasn't a still life. There was some activity going on with it.
Well, the piano looks as though it's dancing. It's great, that movement.
Yeah. And again, with the complementary colors, you got the orange and the blue. So there's a completion to this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would look like Halloween.
So we're at number 17 of 34, and we have 8 minutes left. So I just thought maybe, I don't know if anybody has more specific questions, or you want me to kind of go through the rest of the pictures.
Yes.
You know what I might do, Jennifer, is just make the announcement about the next 2 weeks, the artist, and then we can end with Father John rather than the announcement. Okay, so I just want to say that September 9th, we're going to have Tiffany Lawson, our Loft Gallery artist, in multidisciplinary mediums in paper and found objects. And that's going to be September 9th, Thursday, by Zoom. All right. Wow, wonderful. That's
And we'll just cycle through these.
yes.
Again, working on hands and shapes. This is spiritual direction.
Oh, really?
3 different modes of spiritual direction. In the top line, the person was bloviating, and the director is listening, but God, the little bird at the end, is just waiting patiently for the person to stop bloviating. The bottom one is the middle one is the person just talking about himself, and the director is attentive, but still it's all about himself. The third one is where no, I'm sorry. The second one is to the right, is where the director and the directee are talking. The person is magnified, and God is very attentive to what's happening within that person because something's great happening. And then the one on the bottom is the person has so much drama that God is looking away, that little bird looking away, but looking back to say, are you done yet? So that we can get to direction. So I was just playing around with it. That's a watercolor.
Wonderful.
Is that one sold?
That one's sold, yes. I might do another of it. This is just a pumpkin. I love pumpkins. We can cycle through quickly. That's a watercolor. This was one I did last year, just a Christmas tree in pointillism. So that takes some time, but I enjoy that process. It is somehow prayerful.
What's the dimensions of that?
That's 3 feet by 2.5 feet.
Wow, that's a lot of dots.
It is a lot of dots.
Mm.
This is the embrace. This is reconciliation. That one's sold. I forget exactly where it goes to. I've seen this image before, so I wanted to see if I could replicate it, but in this with these patterns and almost like textiles, but just to show the person turned into another person. This is the goal of our lives, that we are to cherish and to love one another, because we're all children of God.
Amen.
So this is a 1630 house, Old Sturbridge Village. And again, like one of the earlier paintings, I wanted to capture light at the end of the day as it was setting upon this house. So I wanted it to be minimalistic and to let the light and the shadow be the star.
Mm.
This was a watercolor that I did in class, just a line in 5 different versions. And, you know, it's not easy to get texture within watercolor, but
Yeah.
and you can see how the shadow is there that gives it added dimensionality, different perspective. This is I call it nobility. It's kind of the ascent of the human person, but most especially as we're going through Black Lives Matter, the nobility of a person of color who is beloved by God and is drawn to God. Though that other humans might not see that nobility, it is inherent to that person. So I'm trying to make a statement. This is just watercolor. It's hanging in my cousin's bathroom. She just loves it, down on Cape Cod. And just, again, working with the lights and the darkness of the blues. This was the guy who bought the pointillism said, "I cannot buy any more of your paintings." And then he saw this and he says, "I have to have this." So this is by 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet. And again, just sailboats out on the sea with this kind of turbulence. And this again, if you look at if you blow up the base, I think this version might have lots of colors in there. Yeah, you can see all the dots around there. Even around the sailboat, you can see these reds up in the sky, reds and yellows. I just wanted more of a depth to it than just those colors. And this went so quickly. Pine trees trees in the snow, not necessarily pine, but just I love the quickness of it, the darkness against the light. You can imagine the snow at the base and just this flurry of activity that I just really like that one.
Well, Father John, as we come to one bell of this
Okay.
August 26th, 2021, we are so grateful to you. This was magnificent. Thank you for being with us from Boston.
My pleasure. Thank you for hosting me.